We're now going to configure DHCP for the headquarter and branch 1 site on the publisher call manager. Before we do anything, we need to make sure that we can reach call manager, ping your call manager from your machine that you're working from, 10.10.2.10.10. Hopefully get a response. If not, check that you have a software VPN or hardware VPN established correctly, or if you're using your own pod, make sure that the settings are correct, your access to your servers is good. So in my case, we're good to go. I can ping 10.10.2.10.10 and 10.10.2.10.11. So let's go and get a web page to get to call manager, https 10.10.2.10.10/ccm admin. The credentials, admin C1 SC0123 in the case of Proctor Labs. We should, Lab 1, have a clean configuration. There shouldn't be any DHCP server setup. Our services should not be activated. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to just go through and configure system server. See what we have. We have the pub and the sub. Although strictly speaking not entirely necessary for DHCP, this is something you should probably get in the habit of doing. Go system server, call manager group, and then you can configure the DHCP pool and whatever else you need to do. So, although strictly speaking not entirely necessary, and the solutions PDF does not kind of document that you have to do this, it's worth just always getting in the habit of doing it, because whenever you deal with call manager, you always have to make sure that you can reach it. And at the moment, the phones would have to resolve UCM pub and UCM sub, and there's no DNS, there's no hostname resolution for the phones in the lab at least, and so we'd have to put the IP address of the publisher and subscriber here to bypass hostname resolution. The phone would register if you leave it alone. If you leave the name to UCM pub, UCM sub, the phone will register, because what it does is, if after a timeout, it will just end up using the TFTP server. So if the TFTP server was the publisher, you'd register after a timeout. You register to the publisher, you think life is great, but in reality there isn't a backup call manager. In reality it's taking too long for that phone to register to call manager. So this is a mandatory step. System server, put the IP address there. And let's just go to the subscriber, do the same thing. Now if you don't see a subscriber, you'll have to just add it. And what I'm going to do now is just activate my services. Go to the publisher first. What I'm going to do is check all services and then uncheck the ones I don't want. I'll never need SMDI messaging, so Cisco messaging interface is not required. So we've got Call Manager TFTP, self-explanatory. And in case we do have mobile voice access, we've enabled that. Media streaming, CTI Manager. So all these services, interestingly enough, we've got Dial Number Analyzer. This is a service as well if we want to use the DNA tool. Otherwise, if we go to serviceability without activating it, there is no DNA tool available to you. So we activate DNA just in case we have that. And one more of interest here in our case is the DHCP monitor service. We're activating that. And we're only activating that on the publisher because only the publisher is a DHCP server. And we don't want to start any security services, so get rid of those. Once it takes a couple of minutes for that to finish, let's go to the subscriber and repeat. What we're going to do is check all services, uncheck the security, Cisco messaging interface, and we don't need DHCP running on the subscriber since the publisher is the DHCP server for the branch 1 and HQ sites. So once we have our services activated, let's go back to administration and system. Oh, let's just continue down the system menu. System server, we put the IP addresses. Doesn't matter what you do here, you don't need to change the call manager names, and UCM pub and UCM sub is just fine. UCM group, again, not strictly speaking necessary for this particular task, but you're always going to go and probably do this first in Call Manager. So that's why I'm just a creature of habit. I'm going to put the sub above the pub because that's our primary call processing agent. Now, you would have already gone into our system UCM and enabled auto-registration potentially, but we're not going to register phones in Lab 1, and so I'm not going to enable auto-registration at this point in time. So system server, system UCM, UCM group. Now, we'll come back to NTP in a later task. Let's just go down to the DHCP server, add a new server, and it's the publishers that's going to be the DHCP server in our case. And our server options, will be propagated to each one of the scopes we're going to create. We're going to have 2 subnets or scopes, one for the headquarter phones, one for the branch 1 phones. And we can define the TFTP server in each of the scopes, in other words twice, or we can just do it one time under the DHCP server, which the scopes, or should I say the subnets here are going to inherit. So let me go ahead and just put the primary TFTP to be the sub, the secondary to be the pub. It might be that you only want to have the publisher as the TFTP. Look at the question carefully. We've got option 66. This is mutually exclusive. You either use 66 or option 150, not both. So we've chosen to use 150, but you could have used 66 instead. We've got some timers to modify. 1 hour, op cache timeout, and that's 3600 seconds. We got the least time, which is 8 hours. So that's going to be 60 seconds, 60 minutes, multiplied by 8. 28,800. Renewal time half that, 14,400. Save it. Now let's go to DHCP subnet, a scope as it's known as in Windows. as the server. What's the network address? We're starting off with 200.10.254. Default router. Subnet mask class C. Everything else will be inherited from the DHCP server, and we're going to just add one for the branch 1. Just change that to be 201. That'll be 201.1 VLAN 240. On the routers, what we're going to have is we need to translate that DHCP broadcast into a unicast, and so we need the helper address on the interface on the voice subnet. So on the HQ, it's going to be Fast Ethernet 00.20, which is our voice subinterface, VLAN 20, that the phones are residing in. There's going to be a DHCP broadcast in that layer 2 domain in VLAN 20, and we want to translate that into a unicast to our publisher call manager. And over in branch 1, it's the VLAN 240. We now want to power cycle the phone. Do the same in the branch 1. Going to use the show CDP neighbor detail command because these phones are remote. I can't actually see them, and this is going to tell me the IP address 10.10.201.253, and on the 3750 didn't correctly bring this interface up. That was the branch 1 phone IP address. If I go to network configuration, you can see DHCP server 10.10.210.10, IP address 201.253, TFTP is set, default gateway. What you could do if the phone is in front of you, you could erase the configuration, or you can restore the network configuration to factory defaults, and then just ensure that it isn't using its existing configuration file, that it is indeed picking an IP address up from your DHCP server. Because if the DHCP broadcast fails, if for whatever reason there's no TFTP server, then what will happen is it will, when I say it, the phone will use its configuration file from the last guy who's in the lab, who presumably in 8 hours got the phone getting an IP address. Okay, what will happen is the phone will use its configuration file stored within the phone. So it's always a good idea to just be a bit paranoid and just assume that this is the configuration file